All right, guys, we're back here on Southeastern 16, presented by FanDuel. Jay Greeson joins as we get ready to preview Auburn versus South Alabama. Jay, Chris always likes to ask you about your FanDuel numbers and what you have your eye on. For this game, Auburn is a 25.5 point favorite against the Jaguars. 53.5 is the over-under. Forgot to mention, too, this is an 11:45 a.m. kickoff Central Time on the SEC Network. But Jay, anything interesting going on at FanDuel maybe for this game or elsewhere as we get ready for this one in week 3?
I guess it's because Auburn moved into the realm of the ranked for the first time in 56 Associated Press polls. But the FanDuel menu is much greater for this game than it has been for the previous two. They've got options like, those big Super Bowl boards where you fill your name in on a
Yep.
square and they draw the numbers. FanDuel, if you want to pick any score ending in the last digit for any quarter, like if you think it could be 0-0 after one or 10-0 at half, you can pick South Alabama, Auburn, and if the zeros line up in any quarter, it's paying plus 420. I think that's a fun bet that lasts the whole game, whether your team's covering or not.
The FanDuel squares, definitely.
Yes.
Yes, that's how they're phrasing it. The squares for this game, yeah. Have fun, bet responsibly, folks, because I may be getting in on the action here, knowing that FanDuel squares are a thing, because I love those for the Super Bowl. But I'll tell you who else has gotten in on the action. That's Jay Greeson, because last week's play of the week, play of the century, as I would like to call it, the 10.5 for the Auburn Tigers after the first quarter, cashed for me, Jay. I appreciate that nice little tip on this one. We'll see what you can come up with when we get to our picks for this game, what you like the most. But again, if we're looking at the matchup here, we know kind of what the story has been for Auburn. Jackson Arnold has been very good so far. Certainly, we all remember kind of the highs of the win at Baylor. They come out last week, beat a Ball State team that we said they were going to beat just unmercifully, potentially, just based on kind of the matchup there. And, a little banged up for Auburn here. I know we're going to talk about that. If you're looking at South Alabama, off to a 1-1 start, 38-21 win against Morgan State. Then they come off of a 33-31 loss to Tulane. The Jaguars were picked fourth in the West Division in the Sun Belt preseason poll. Major Applewhite, the coach there, second year on the job. And we'll get into a little bit more of kind of the positional stuff for South Alabama. But, Jay, the one thing you and I talked about before we started recording, and has been a theme of our videos this week on the channel, is the spot, the trap, the look ahead, whatever phrase you want to use. Auburn in that situation, potentially Oklahoma, Missouri. Like, there are several teams in the SEC this week that feel like they have that spot game here.
It is diabolical. And you're right. It's not just reserved for Auburn, because Oklahoma's in the same spot. And look, if you think it's just coach speak, ask Billy Napier about being in that spot last week, because everybody was talking about Florida LSU this year or this weekend, and the Gators they spit the bit. And yes, I did that on purpose. So, look, Hugh Freeze is probably mentioning Florida's debacle multiple times, and it's an early kick. It's in the AM Central Time Zone. It is an in-state scenario where those kids would have cut off a digit to be recruited by Auburn. And that 31-30 game, or 33-31 game, Tulane scored in the final minute and didn't get the two to force overtime.
Yep. Wild game between those two teams. And that's where, like, if you do look at South Alabama, if you look at, again, some of like the positional stuff. Now, keep in mind, one of the big offseason stories, and this was on display for the world to see the other night, where Gio Lopez, of course, was the quarterback, South Alabama, transfers to North Carolina. And that was something where, I mean, that's kind of a big storyline, where you lose your quarterback in the transfer portal in the spring. And so that was kind of a major talking point for Major Applewhite and company. So it's a little different, offensively than it was last year. But if you still look at kind of the projections for this offense, their offensive line ranked as one of the best in the Sun Belt, if not the best by Phil Steele in his position rankings heading into the season. And so, like, I think that's one of those things where you talk about, like, if you're looking at the ingredients for a look ahead game, there are some things where you've got a coach, I think, that's pretty good at kind of knowing what to dial up here. Yes, there were some changes. They got hit hard by the portal, but still, I think there's kind of some stuff here that South Alabama, if this is one of those games where, let's say, Auburn gets off to a slow start, something like that, you can at least find some paths here for this to be more interesting than maybe meets the eye.
Completely agree, Blake. And I mean, you mentioned the running game. The Bullet kids got back-to-back 100-yard games to start the season. Bishop Davenport, who's replacing the Lopez kid after he portaled, he's completing 76% of his throws. So in place for a former high-profile quarterback, you have to expect them to be efficient. They're not going to be as athletic. But again, it's a monster pinata hanging in the middle of the party with nothing to lose for South Alabama.
Yeah, and I think, and I feel like I'm repeating this because we've said it in all the other videos this week, but it's like, if you're Hugh Freeze, it is, I think Brent Venables was the one who said it, like coming off of, the win against Michigan. It's sort of the responding to success. And it's like teams like that, now that have been talked up week after week now, these past couple of weeks, it's just being able to kind of keep that same momentum going. And like you mentioned, everybody's already looking ahead to next week, and everybody's telling Jackson Arnold, man, this game against Oklahoma is going to be perhaps the biggest in the country and all this other stuff. And meanwhile, you do have a team that has nothing to lose on the other side. And look, Auburn fans know this, right? Like, they've been in this spot before and it's not gone well. And so we're not by any means trying to say, oh man, Auburn's in trouble here. That's not it. But like, if you watch the other videos we've done on the channel, like, this is the same theme we've talked about with them. Is just, hey, these are spots where, just like Oklahoma traveling to Temple for an 11 a.m. kickoff, against a Temple team that is improved, and you're coming off the big win against Michigan. A little bit different for Auburn. They're not coming off the Baylor win. They're coming off a Ball State win. But you've got a team here that is better than Ball State. And I think that's just something, too, where you want to see Auburn come out and just be able to, I feel like in these games like this, as you said, the physicality up front, you feel like is sort of the story here. And I think that's one for me that sort of stands out. A little inexperienced on the South Alabama defensive line. They're kind of starting, with several new pieces. And so I think that's where I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn is able to come out and just kind of dictate things up front, and that leads to some easy scores potentially.
I think that's well said, and I'm glad you brought up the Venables quote about the difficulties of handling not only adversity but also handling success. And it's not just in the building. Yep. Because you and I frequently, when we do these, we reference Any Given Saturday because it just was eye-opening on so many levels. But the quote Brian Kelly had about making your living with 18 to 22-year-olds is never more true and more challenging than these guys walking around campus all week and hearing, man, we're back. We're getting to Atlanta. We're man, that game was great. You guys are going to kill Oklahoma. I mean, and that's that's who fans are. And you can't begrudge the fan, and everybody loves to hear how great they are. I mean, but it is a perpetual trap game. And I completely agree with the way you wrapped it up. Look, I don't expect Auburn to lose. I wouldn't bet them to cover the 25 with your last dollar. So, but I do have a couple of picks for those of us who like to wet our beak a little, as they say in Godfather 2.
All right, we're going to get to Jay's picks. Let's quickly tell you about our friends, GameTimeSidekicks.com. Auburn fans, you know all about them. You've been buying a lot of cups. Officially licensed stainless steel drinkware. Every SEC school is there. Over 350 more universities as well. Everything from stainless steel sippy cups, tumblers, 40-ounce bottles, and the shaker cups. Oh, they got all kinds of stuff over there. GameTimeSidekicks.com. Use our promo code SE16 for 20% discount. SE16, GameTimeSidekicks.com. Also, our friends over at ROKFORM, the world's strongest magnetic phone case. Extreme protection, super strong magnets, rock lock, secure mounting. September, their busiest month of the year. the new iPhone release. They got all kinds of stuff, phone cases, accessories, golf stuff. It's all there. SEC25 for 25% off at ROKFORM, ROKFORM.com. And then our new friends over at Hovey Dry Goods. Jay Greeson and I both have hats. Of course, I'm not as prepared as Jay. They sent me an Auburn and LSU hat, so I could present that as well. But Jay's got a fine-looking hat from Hovey Dry Goods. Look no further than Hovey for high-quality headwear with a great fit and unique designs. Our Bad Beat Team of the Week is Ole Miss. Use the code REBS, R-E-B-S, for a nice discount over at Hovey Dry Goods. All right, Jay, you had some nice, fun numbers for people in their pick for this one.
I not to beat a dead horse, but I do believe in dancing with who brung you. Auburn's -6.5 in the first quarter.
Yes,
I'm bullish on that. It's under the touchdown, the magic number of a touchdown. You have to pay a little longer odds. FanDuel has it at -120, but I still think that is a playable number because if you wanted to look even at first half, that's under 14. Look, I think Hugh Freeze is going to do everything in his power to start fast again. With the banged-up running back room, I think you'll get to see a fair amount of Jeremiah Cobb early, but I also think Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton will be prominently featured in the first half, and then I hope a whole lot of those guys come out without their shoulder pads for the final 2 quarters in Jordan-Hare. I'm going to take Auburn to win by 17, which does not cover, but I am on Auburn for sure in the first quarter, and I would probably play them both first quarter, first half on FanDuel.
All right. I feel like I'm sitting in for Brian Edwards here because I'm looking down at my Feel Steel magazine right now, and I want to make sure I've got the right number here. But South Alabama, of course, the first meeting between these two. South Alabama, 1-7 straight up, 4-4 against the spread all time against the SEC. They lost 42-10 last year to LSU. As we remember, they were a 20-point dog in that game since 2020. 6-4 as a double-digit dog, but 0-3 as a dog of 20 or more points. So, again, some numbers there. If you'd like to use those, probably no surprise. I'm also going to pick Auburn in this one. Listen, we mentioned all the ways that this could potentially be a letdown spot for Auburn, a look-ahead game, and all that stuff. We just never know because some of these teams may come out and just completely dominate. Some of these teams may be a little sluggish. Like we said, it's not just Auburn, several other teams in the spot, Oklahoma, Missouri, and so forth. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. You guys know we'll have it covered here at Southeastern 16. This is, as we said, an early game, so we will talk about this one live on Saturday in our first reaction, which we're going to have probably 3 on Saturday because it is quite a slate, as we know, of SEC on SEC games. And so we'll talk about Auburn, South Alabama, and the others from that early slate in the early afternoon on Saturday. Best way to know we're going live, turn on your notifications, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. We appreciate you guys watching as always, and we'll talk to you soon here at Southeastern 16, presented by